This is the way it feels to move through summer in Lululemon. Iconic Align softness without the front seam. For our smoothest look and feel ever, summer won't know what hit it. Stretch your limits in the non-stop flexibility of the new Lululemon Align No-Line Pant in select stores and at Lululemon.com.
You shut off technology before and after, and you really just, again, focus on you. During the treatments, it's, headphones on, eye mask on, and you're taking a deep journey within yourself. Even if nothing instrumental or gigantic comes out of that experience, it's just the experience of that in totality, the time out for yourself, that quiet space. Like, there's a restorative aspect of that. So you come out of those experiences and just feeling a little bit more refreshed.
You're listening to Make Some Noise podcast, episode number 684, with guests Kristin Arden and Stephanie Trunzo.
Welcome to Make Some Noise podcast, your guide for strategies, tools, and insight to empower yourself. I'm your host, Andrea Owen, global speaker, entrepreneur, life coach since 2007, and author of 3 books that have been translated into 18 languages and are available in 22 countries. Each week, I'll bring you a guest or a lesson that will help you maximize unshakable confidence, master resilience, and make some noise in your life. You ready? Let's go.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm so glad that you're here. Hey, guess what we're talking about today? We're talking about 2 of my favorite topics, anxiety and psychedelic therapy. I feel like they go well together. They are like peas and carrots. And by peas and carrots, I mean one can very much help the other. And you might have noticed that I'm on a little bit of a kick here because I've introduced psychedelic therapy in my life, and it's been absolutely life-changing. Just a reminder that I have a special private podcast feed. It's totally free. It's actually ad-free as well. And to access it, you do have to go to andreaowen.com/journey. That is where I'm taking you through my ketamine therapy sessions, the things that I'm seeing, hearing, learning, experiencing, feeling. When I am through those, I'm going to give you a play-by-play of the 4 ayahuasca ceremonies that I experienced in the very beginning of June. Also, I did put out a podcast episode last week about the ayahuasca retreat that I went on, and it was just an overview. So if you want a more detailed version of that and the story, buckle up. It is wild when I get to the ayahuasca episodes. Definitely head over there, andreaowen.com/journey. And P.S. on that note, if you are feeling the call, if you are interested in joining me, not only joining me for a week-long ayahuasca retreat, but getting a discount, I am working out the details of that. So please message me. I have a short list of women who are interested in coming along. All you need to do is either DM me on Instagram. I'm Hey Andrea Owen over there, or shoot an email to us, support@andreaowen.com. You can even just put in the subject line, Aya interested, AYA interested, and we will put you on a short list of amazing people who are hearing the call, and we'll reach out when I have more details and you and I can jump on a call and see if it's for you. So today we're talking about ketamine therapy today. And Kristin Arden is one of my guests today. We had a little bit of a roundtable discussion. She was on episode 600. That link will be in the show notes, where she's a clinician at Mindbloom and knows a lot about ketamine therapy. I always want to know the science and the safety of things like this. It's a big deal. And so she was on talking about that, what ketamine is, what it does to your brain, what are the sessions like? And today we're taking it a step further. So let me tell you about our guest today before we jump in. Kristin Arden is a lead clinician at Mindbloom and is a board-certified psychiatric nurse practitioner with over 15 years experience working in mental health. Her work has been instrumental in the development of Mindbloom's treatment methodologies. In addition to work at Mindbloom, she was a guest lecturer at NYU on topics such as psychedelic therapy and substance use disorders, and practices addiction medicine from a harm reduction mindset with individuals in the justice system. And Stephanie Trunzo, currently the CEO of Merge, is a seasoned executive entrepreneur and thought leader with more than 20 years of leadership experience spanning technology, marketing, health, and storytelling. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Kristin and Stephanie. Stephanie and Kristin, thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
We have prepped this has been the most prep ever for one of my almost 700 episodes. And I love that because I had mentioned to you and your team that anytime one of my episodes has anxiety in the title, I get more downloads. So that's, a big giant hint to me that my audience, I have a lot of high achieving women who struggle with anxiety, and myself included, me too. And ketamine has helped me so much in this regard. And so that's why I'm so excited to have both of you on from different perspectives and have this kind of as a roundtable between the three of us. I read your bios before we started. People know me as someone who's struggled. I got my official anxiety diagnosis in 2003 when I was almost 28. And have been on and off medication. Later got when I was 45, 5 years ago, got a diagnosis of ADHD or ADD. And so I get it. I've been on the struggle bus for a long time. I started ketamine therapy, I believe, late 2023, maybe early 2024, and it moved the needle a lot. So I'm very excited about this conversation. Thanks again for being here. I'm going to start by throwing this out to both of you. And maybe Kristin, maybe you can go first, and then I want to hear from Stephanie. Why do you think so many, especially high-functioning women, these are women that you probably wouldn't think so on the outside, high-functioning women struggle with anxiety?
I mean, what I see women that are high functioning is really a struggle to prioritize yourself. So I think it's a challenge to balance and manage a lot of competing priorities that really just doesn't leave space for self-care and taking care of like your basic core needs. I also think too that we find ourselves in positions where we have to feel like we need to demonstrate our abilities at a higher level than maybe other people coming into those roles may. And I think that's just like extra pressure that we put on ourselves to demonstrate our capabilities and abilities overall just to perform and succeed.
I completely agree with you, Kristin. And I feel like, to build on that, it's actually to be high functioning and successful as a woman. It is the recipe requires anxiety. The world that we live in and operate in is not built for us. And so there is a tax that we pay, and that tax is something that involves, Kristin, like you said, not making time for self-care or, not even being able to label or name, Andrea, to your point, like it was anxiety, it's ADHD, it's these other things that we didn't really know or were not given the space to figure out. And so I think that, those things come hand in hand because the world is built to force that unfortunate situation.
I think we're living in a time, I heard this on social media somewhere recently about how like as humans, we weren't built to know about all of the atrocities that are happening worldwide all at once. Like our nervous systems are not equipped to cope with that. So it's like we're constantly being barraged with these like little T traumas. Another layer of that is what you were both pointing to around the cultural and social conditioning that we receive as women to put everyone before us. So we're constantly putting everyone else's needs who are struggling with a lot of the same things that we are. But we don't have the time or space to even tap into any resources that we might be lucky enough to have. So it like becomes this perpetual state of anxiety. That's my experience and what I see in my clients and even my friends and colleagues.
And I think that is maybe even more true. And this is a generalization, of course, but maybe even more true for women where there is a natural tendency towards empathy. And so you're always receiving that information in a way that weighs upon you and is not just something that's flashing in front of your eyes. All of our brains built in a way that this is information overload in a constant basis that feels like threat after threat after threat. And if you are inclined to be empathetic or, more, maybe aware of thinking about how things feel in other people's shoes, I think that's just even yet another burden then that that we carry.
For sure. I'm thinking of one of my friends that I've known since we were 14ish, and we always send memes back and forth. Like every time I see a meme that is like either a frazzled cat or something like that, I think of her because she's always been that person since we were young to just be the worrier, the perpetual worrier. She was like the mom of the group too, like kind of always the more responsible one when we were in our early 20s and we really needed a chaperone like that because she was just constantly watching out. And her anxiety was always sky high. And which brings me to what I want to talk about quickly is that she recently reached out. We were texting and she's going to start ketamine therapy because she's been interested in it, but worried, because like, what is this stuff that Andrea talks about? And so I'm curious, and Kristin, I would love for you to kick this off. What happens in the brain during a ketamine therapy session, and how does that help people specifically who struggle with anxiety?
The way ketamine works in the brain. So ketamine increases neuroplasticity, which is our brain's ability to form new connections and communicate and form new connections and pathways, allowing parts of our brain to communicate better with other parts. So specific to when we think about relative to the treatment of anxiety, this change often occurs in the parts of our brain that are responsible for higher level cognitive thought processing and emotional regulation.
I love that definition because to me, it feels like as someone who's been a client of Mindbloom's and just ketamine therapy in general, I don't feel like I was conscious of any of that. Like it just sort of happened behind the scenes. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think you see that change further downstream as you see increased ability to rewire some very well ingrained thought patterns or maybe self-limiting beliefs or change certain behaviors that you've struggled to change in the past.
Yeah.
If you think about that, what's happening in the brain, that increased connectivity with different parts of our brain, it really just makes our brain more flexible. I like to think about ketamine as kind of like a fertilizer for our brain. So I don't think we realize the neurobiological effects that things like chronic stress and anxiety have on the tissues in our brain and really throughout our body. And so there's actually been studies that have compared a stressed brain to a normal brain, quote unquote, normal brain. Mm-hmm. And what we can see in the stressed brain is it looks very similar to, I would describe as like a tree in the winter. It's very sparse. The branches aren't really connecting or communicating with each other. And we see a brain after treatment with ketamine, the brain looks much more like a tree in the spring, much more full with different parts connecting. So if we just think about how that happening in our brain in a time where we're trying to change can be supportive of an overall healing process. So if we're trying to heal ourselves and our brain is kind of tired and worn out, we're going to struggle with doing so.
Okay. Stephanie, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I think what a cool image you just painted of those trees, by the way. Like, I really like that description is such a beautiful description, actually, of what healthy can look like. I think what I would say is, you said, Andrea, that like, it's not like you necessarily feel that in the moment when you're in the process of ketamine therapy. But I think that like my experience, I feel like I practice yoga and I meditate regularly. I'm a yoga instructor. And one of the things that yoga has taught me, and I was definitely one of those people who was like, I hate yoga. I drink coffee, not water. I'm very busy. I don't have time to be still, like all of that. And what yoga taught me over years is that you have to stay sometimes in the moments that are uncomfortable or when there is discomfort. And that ability to stay in that moment is really, really hard work if you are somebody who's constant motion and, kind of fleeing emotion often. And to me, during the process of ketamine therapy, what was happening in my brain, the way that I did experience it, was that it was so much faster and easier to stay in that moment, to have some space to stay in that moment, instead of it being, I need an hour of meditation to sink into a place deep enough that I actually can rewire some of these patterns or look at something that makes me uncomfortable to look at in my brain and kind of address it and think differently about it in a way that's a little bit more safe.
I had a similar experience, and I love that metaphor that you used too, Kristin. And before we started recording, I was eating lunch and I made a quick Instagram reel because I hadn't posted in over a week. And it's just a clip of me sitting there eating leftover beef stroganoff in the backyard, throwing this disgusting toy that my dog is obsessed with. And I wrote on the screen, who wants to sit with me while I throw this gross toy for my dog while I sit in a perpetual state of overwhelm? When I posted it, I thought to myself, this perpetual state of overwhelm feels very different than the same state 2 years ago. And here's the difference. One, this was before ketamine. I would have been in the perpetual state of overwhelm and felt the emotional impact of that. Because I feel like those are two separate things. There's the thoughts around just like the knowing, like I have a lot of moving parts going on in my life and they're big moving parts. I'm getting divorced. Like I have all this stuff. I have a inbox that's overflowing, blah, blah, blah. You know, the list. And then there's the emotional impact that creates. So now when I'm in that same perpetual state of overwhelm, I still have the same long, big to-do list of big things that are going on, but the emotional impact is almost gone. So I call it like a peaceful perpetual state of overwhelm. That's really the truth of it. And it's still kind of weird. And I'm like, whose life is this? Like, whose brain is this? Because this is new for me. I am 50 years old. I have spent the vast majority of my life when I'm in states of perpetual overwhelm, dramatic about it. Like the sky is falling. I have so many stories about it. Just the drama. The drama is almost gone now. It's so amazing. Like that, take all my money. Here, you're gonna have it. That's what it's like for me.
Leading onto that a little bit. So one of the things that I see a lot with my clients, and I've thought a lot about what you've described there, is trying to understand this phenomenon that I've seen people experience similar things like you've just described now, is it's what I've arrived at is that I think it's something in the ketamine treatment that the ketamine treatment shows us a sense of calm. So for many of us, we've never really had that opportunity to like sit there and see our thoughts and not be required to react to them. So it creates almost like a separation between those thoughts and that like ruminating spiral and how we react or respond to them. And then you experience that in a ketamine session. You have a few ketamine sessions and it becomes something beyond, well, this is this thing that happens and I'm able to do during a ketamine therapy session, but more so something that is just something I'm able to do. I see that I have that capability to pause before reacting to things. And so I think that that's a little bit of what you described there. It's like a separation between the thoughts and our reaction to them. And what I see a lot of times is that what we're reacting to, pre-ketamine state, is we're reacting to the emotions. So we're already so many steps ahead down this pathway of activating ourselves and building up this anxious state that it's not until we get to that point of emotional distress that we're like, something is wrong here. And by then it's so much more challenging, just like bring ourselves back to center and ground ourselves.
It's also stops you from the opposite, which is disassociation. So I think that my reaction to anxiety has typically been to, and why on the surface, no one would ever see that part of like the little feet that are paddling under the water, is survival kind of techniques that are more about compartmentalizing or disassociating and not really experiencing or being part of those moments. And so, even when I say during ketamine therapy and, the lasting impact since, it's not so much about feeling disassociated so that you can then process things. It's about still feeling integrated with it, right? And not without the emotional drama associated, but also without the reaction to step away and not actually participate in it.
Yes. And I want to add too that it's not because in my experience with some antidepressants, especially the emotional flat affect that I received, I didn't like that. And so this is different. Like I still have the ability to emote as I would normally. It's just it's emotional regulation is what it feels like. And I'm like, oh, this is what that's like. Like, is this what people are talking about who can emotionally regulate easily? That's what I feel the gift has been, like one of the biggest gifts for me. We do need to take a quick ad break. When we get back, I want to jump into asking you about the confusion and the stigma around ketamine therapy, because I think it's an important topic. We'll be right back. Did you know that when your metabolism is working properly, you feel it in every area of your life? Your energy, your focus, even your sleep. I found a tool that helps me understand what's going on in my body every day, and it's called Lumen. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It measures your metabolism through your breath. Yep, just one breath, and shows you whether you're burning fat or carbs. The app then gives you personalized guidance for nutrition, workout, sleep, and even stress management. You just breathe into it first thing in the morning, and then you've got real-time insight into how your body's doing. You can also use it before and after meals or workouts to stay on top of your health game. Your metabolism is your body's engine, and when it's running efficiently, you definitely feel the difference. Lumen even adjusts its recommendations based on your cycle or menopause stage, so your body stays supported through all the shifts. I've started using Lumen in the mornings to see how my sleep affects the way my body functions. On days I sleep well, I can literally see in real time how my body's working more efficiently. It's like a check-in with my body that actually gives me answers. The warmer months are coming. Spring back into your health and fitness. Go to lumen.me/noise to get 10% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/noise for 10% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. If you're a woman over 40 dealing with perimenopause, you don't have to accept it as just another part of aging. Did you know there are so many perimenopause symptoms? Hot flashes and night sweats, trouble sleeping, painful sex, vaginal dryness, and libido change, weight and body changes, brain fog and memory lapses, moodiness, anxiety and depression, period problems, hair and skin changes, joint pain, bone loss, and fracture risk. The experts at MIDI Health understand what you're experiencing and know how to help. MIDI clinicians are menopause experts dedicated to providing safe, effective, FDA-approved solutions. Visits and prescriptions are covered by major insurance providers, no membership fees or hidden costs. If you're uninsured or Medicare is out of network under your plan, they also offer affordable cash payment for services. I know for me, as I'm about to turn 50 in 2025, finding a doctor that specializes in perimenopause and menopause is incredibly important. You deserve to feel great. Book your virtual visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com.
Carla only.
Introducing the new Volvo XC90 with 7-seat versatility, Google built-in, and advanced safety features for all your precious cargo. The new Volvo XC90, designed for life. Visit volvocars.com/US to learn more.
Okay, we're back. And I want to jump into an important question that I have, because I know there's still a lot of confusion and there's also a lot of stigma around ketamine in general, but even ketamine therapy when it's used strictly for ketamine therapy. It's especially like I'm a Gen Xer. I just turned 50. We looked at any kind of quote unquote hallucinogenic or psychedelic as a party drug. It's dangerous. Stay away from it. And especially I'm someone who's in long-term recovery. I've been sober from alcohol for 13 years. So I had to be very, very mindful, careful, and intentional when I tried anything like this. So for those who are concerned about safety, how do you respond to that? In other words, like, what do people need to know about how ketamine therapy is used today compared to what they might hear specifically in the media?
So ketamine is a medication or treatment that has been used in a clinical setting for treatment of mental health conditions for over 2 decades. It's backed by over 100 clinical studies, which have demonstrated its safety and efficacy when used under medical supervision for treatment of conditions like depression, anxiety, and even substance use disorders. There's actually been research that has explored ketamine as a treatment for substance use disorders. And the research has reported that reduced things such as reduced cravings, increased abstinence, and even attenuated effects from withdrawal from substances like cocaine and alcohol. After saying that, I think it's important to also then the distinction between therapeutic use of ketamine and recreational use. One of the challenges on the side of ketamine use, when we think about problematic relationships or use patterns of ketamine developing, is the fact that ketamine is fast acting. It can produce a sense of euphoria and disassociation. One of the key distinctions, I think, in trying to understand then, outside of the structure of a clinical program and the guidance of a trained medical professional, what is the difference between then, what should I be looking at as far as the concerns between therapeutic use and potentially a problematic relationship with ketamine developing, goes back to the intention of use. In the therapeutic setting, our intention is often around one, we have a clear intention. And it's often focused around calling out some of the challenges that we're dealing with in life and facing them directly and head on. And when we start to see problematic relationships with ketamine developing, we start to see the intention being essentially the opposite of that. It's like looking for quick relief through the euphoric effects of the ketamine and an opportunity to just escape from our reality for a period of time. So I would encourage anybody that is struggling and maybe has some concerns to reach out to a medical professional like our clinicians at Mindbloom. At Mindbloom, we've safely facilitated over 600,000 at-home ketamine therapy sessions. Working with a clinician, like you've described, it gives you an opportunity to share some of your challenges and concerns and really make sure that this is the right treatment option for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. Stephanie, do you want to add anything? I
would just say that, I have a psychology degree. I'm a yoga instructor. I've worked in technology and specifically in health technology for years. And, one of the big messages that I feel like across healthcare in general and specifically here is that so much about what we need to do, and specifically speaking to this audience of women, is really believe that we are empowered to understand our own health journey and do the work that it takes to make sure you're forming your own opinions and you're doing your own research and you're making sure that you understand what credible sources look like. And, and I think that one of the things that doing that research for myself, kind of having that context or where I was coming from, looking at how Mindbloom handles this is as big a part of the success of the ketamine therapy that I received as the ketamine. I mean, the ketamine is just a tool. Like in the end, it's the whole program. It's understanding what, the clinical backing behind it. It's understanding the guides that help you with integration. Like it's however you're looking at these tools, they're only as good, any tool. Like it doesn't matter what tool you're choosing, whether it's yoga, ketamine, meditation, taking walks in the park, whatever, they're only as good as how and why you're using them. For me, I think it's as much about saying you really have to be thoughtful about taking control of your own health journey and making sure you do your own research, you understand what it is and how you're using these tools, and be responsible about, making sure that even, companies like Mindbloom are being very responsible at making sure that they're educating their consumers so that they have access to that information before they're making choices. So, that is a big part of what we need to do with healthcare in general, is really encourage and only tolerate, working with companies that believe in empowering people to understand that information and provide them that education and research that helps them make their own choices.
Yeah, I want to say too, in regard to Mindbloom specifically, and PS for everyone listening, like Dr. Kristin or Stephanie or Mindbloom, they're not paying me to do this interview. Like I have a link that will give you a discount to ketamine therapy at Mindbloom, and that's it. I don't get any kickbacks from it. And so I want to preface that and say that when I thought about doing any kind of psychedelic therapy, I was very hesitant and also was like, does this mean I'm going to have to get it from some guy named Kyle with a neck tattoo in the back of Best Buy? Because that is not for me. I can't do that. But I had also been paying close attention to the resurgence of the research that was happening over the last about decade or so, maybe a little bit less. Just seeing the really exciting results that they were getting. And, starting with veterans, a lot of research dollars went to that. And it just seeing these life-changing results, and also understanding too that when I got my generalized anxiety disorder diagnosis and was put on medication for the first time, I do want to say that, and at that moment in time for me, that was life-changing. Just to be able to, that medication just kind of slowed everything down. And I remember there were moments where I would think like, oh, is this how normal people respond to difficult and challenging situations? Like, it was life-changing for me. And then after a while, it did sort of feel like it was just putting a Band-Aid on a wound where I needed some kind of surgery. Really, that's what was happening. And that's where I feel like psychedelic therapy and Mindbloom in particular, with ketamine being the real, I hesitate to use the word fixer because I don't think it's not a one size fits all sort of like miracle drug. But I do think in all the medication and therapies that I've done, I do think that ketamine treatment moved the needle faster and further along than any of them. That's my experience with this. But it is good to gather all your information because, it's many times been not portrayed well in the media. Okay, I want to circle back to like the rewiring thing in our brains. We touched on it a little bit when we were talking about it before, but how would someone know that it's happening? Like, are there certain things to look for or something else that where it can feel like it or look like it that they can kind of see results? What do you think, Kristin?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've seen clients experience is kind of like, how do we know change is happening? And so change is happening in our brain. And the things that we would see are the things that are reflect in our life, how our thoughts about ourselves. So maybe, we have this very intrusive, persistent, negative belief about ourselves that we're not good enough. And you wake up one day, that thought comes in and you're able to challenge it. Or maybe that thought is still there, but it doesn't direct the rest of your day or how you show up in your interactions with others and for yourself. Also thinking about the things that we do, not just the things that we think. So maybe there's the thing that you've been really just struggling to stay consistent with in your life that will be good for you. And you're noticing that, we have maybe in the past, it's like, you have to do that thing and you talk yourself out of it. It's like this negotiation with yourself comes in. The negotiation now, maybe the side that is more positive for you, the side that isn't like saying, hey, like, you don't really need to go to the gym today. Like, this doesn't ever really help you. It's better you just sit here and get the relaxation that you need, even though you know that getting up and moving your body is the thing that would really be good for you at that moment. The other side that says, hey, you know what? Like, that this is good for you. That you have a tendency to try to talk yourself out of these things and go for the immediate gratification and just get up and do it. So this is little subtle changes in your life that you might start to notice. And sometimes I found with people too, I've met with people and they say like, I don't really even know if this is helping me. And then we start talking about what were their main goals and how have things been going. And then what they tell me is, demonstrates that, hey, like they're actually making steps towards these, their primary intentions for the program. And they haven't really connected the dots. So I think that's a part of it too, is just stepping back and reassessing yourself and the progress that you made. What was my intention originally? And what are the things that I'm doing? And drawing attention to that, giving yourself some credit for that, and then leaning into that further and saying, I've made it, one step. How can I make it 2 steps?
Yeah. Okay. I love that. Will you take one more quick ad break when we get back? Stephanie, I would love to hear your take on this and what it's been like for you. We'll be right back.
Paradise is back.
It's finally here.
In a new location, Costa Rica. There will be adventure, drama, and romance.
All gas, no brakes. That's my vibe.
Ready to find some love.
But it wouldn't be paradise without surprises along the way.
These kids need to learn.
That's right. Your favorite Golden alums are crashing the beach.
We bring in a party, baby.
Bachelor in Paradise. New Mondays at 8/7 Central on ABC and stream on Hulu.
Using a Clorox disinfecting wipe to clean that stuck-on sauce from the stove feels like...
Oh, boy. That tickles. Stop.
It feels like coming home to your needy corgi after a long day.
Best part of the day, finally.
With Clorox. Clean feels carefree. Clean feels good. Use as directed.
Now at Chipotle. Our all-new Chipotle Honey Chicken brings Chipotle heat with a touch of sweet. Seared smoked peppers and savory Mexican spices, blended with a hint of pure honey for a perfectly balanced sauce. All combined with fresh, tender chicken hot off the grill, served up in your favorite burrito or bowl. New Chipotle Honey Chicken takes heat and sweet to a whole new level. But it's only at Chipotle for a limited time. Order now in the app for pickup or delivery. Chipotle, for real.
Okay, we're back. Stephanie, what about you? How can you feel like the patterns in your brain have been rewired from ketamine therapy? How did you know it was happening?
Yeah, I think, like Kristin said, in terms of setting intentions, I am always been like an early adopter from a technology perspective, and I'm always experimenting with things. And the way that, and even the way that I've in my career guided clients is like you set a hypothesis and then you test that hypothesis. And so in this case, setting an intention, or what is it that you're trying to overcome, rewire, whatever is that pattern that you're trying to break. And so for me, one of the things that I was using this moment for was a job transition. So it was, for me to reset before I started a new role, the CEO role for Merge. And I didn't want to carry some of those, what I felt like they were dysregulation patterns, to your point earlier. I didn't want to carry those into my next role. And so my hypothesis was, I was feeling a lot of immediate physical reactions when I would get a phone call out of the blue, or a certain name would pop up on text, and it felt very intrusive, and it felt very like I immediately would tense up. I would feel all of those physical reactions. And so I kind of wanted to deprogram. I very much knew what my hypothesis was of like, I want to deprogram these things so that I am not experiencing that same level of physical reaction in what is and will be a continued pattern. So it's not something that I can get away from. Although there are days I would like to change my name and number and move to another country and be completely anonymous. The reality of that is not as such. So when I knew it was really working, and it's also about awareness, right? Paying attention to that, is that I didn't have those physical reactions as much or at all. So as I started to notice that, the same trigger or the same start to that pattern did not produce the same next step action or the same kind of continuation of that pattern. And so for me, my hypothesis was that I'm not going to have those same kinds of physical reactions anymore if I am really rewiring my thinking. And that is how I knew it was working, because I could tell as those same phone calls, same kinds of text messages came in, I wasn't immediately clenching up and, having that kind of anxiety response. I was able to handle it just like you were describing earlier. The overwhelm was not something that I had to like breathe through. It was something I could just participate in, acknowledge, move through, and not kind of have that negative impact that I'd had in the past.
I love that. Okay. So I had a similar experience with that almost exact same scenario, but that was never my intention. It was like a bonus. I felt like it was a bonus because I came in with my intention being what I felt like was large. Like I was asking a lot of this ketamine and of Mindbloom. So I had a traumatic event that happened when I was 30. It was a divorce that happened. There was infidelity. There was an impregnation of somebody else that wasn't me by my husband. And it was traumatic. And it was also a long time ago. And like I had gotten remarried. I had 2 kids with this new, my second husband, and was just like living my life and having success. But I still kept feeling like I couldn't land the plane. That's how I would describe it to the last therapist I hired in 2020 to go through this. And I was very frank with her. And I said, I feel like I need an exorcism. This trauma, I think, was more impactful than I ever knew. When I got sober in 2011 was really when it kicked up, because I wasn't numbing it away with booze anymore. And it really came to the forefront of my nervous system. And I was desperate. I was like, here's my credit card. Please tell me what I need to do to just like, I wanted her to have a spoon and to scoop it out, because it was impacting me emotionally still. And I had shame around it too. And I'm like, I am a strong, smart, capable woman. Why am I still emotionally impacted by this event that happened over a decade ago. And I knew that talk therapy had only gotten me so far. And I knew I needed to do some somatic or some like unconscious rewiring. And so I got that from the ketamine therapy. And I go into that on a separate podcast series that I have. I'll link to that in the show notes for people who are interested. However, what I wasn't expecting was what you just described, Stephanie. And so my second marriage after many, many years we had a wonderful marriage. It did end up not working out. And when I first started ketamine therapy, we were going through the very first steps of our divorce. And what you were describing, Stephanie, of like that impact of when you get a text message that from something or someone that causes an emotional response, it feels like a shot of adrenaline in the heart. You know, like it's just that it's that triggered and it's physically impactful for everyone. It might feel a little bit different. And I would get that every time I would see my lawyer's name pop up. She's a lovely woman. I hired her. I pay her a lot of money to do, but every time I would see her name pop up in my inbox, I was like, it was a trigger of like, I have to deal with something really emotionally difficult. Once I started, I think I got through maybe 3 or 4 sessions and I noticed her email come up in my inbox and I didn't even flinch. And I was like, what is happening? What is this? Who is sitting in this chair? And that was something I didn't even, it was like a unintended but wonderful bonus of ketamine therapy. And I was like, how rad is that? And that's what I mean by like the circumstances are still there, but the emotional impact is either way lessened or gone. And that feels like a miracle, truly.
Well, when we talk about high functioning, successful women, I think that, you know, one of the things that like what you're saying and kind of from my own experience, even when those names would pop up or, you know, whatever it was, I knew I was capable of handling them. However, the cost of capability was much higher. And so, you know, the cost of managing that emotional reaction, of thinking through the next steps, of finding space to figure out how to get, you know, whatever you need to move forward. So, you know, on the surface, for me, on the surface, it looks like you're completely capable, you're totally handling it. But, you know, under the surface, it is those little feet that are paddling. And so that cost of being capable was much, much higher. Afterwards, you know, and kind of now rewiring some of those things, my capability hasn't changed. I'm operating the same way. I'm still getting all of the things done and achieving, but the cost is so much lower now. Like I'm not spending excess energy on managing the emotion or physical response. I'm able to put all of that energy towards the things that are productive. And that just feels fulfilling in a different way also. I mean, you know, being successful at a level where you don't have to overspend your energy just gives you more opportunity to do even more or different, take a walk or do whatever other thing you feel like doing for yourself. Yeah.
Kristin, did you want to add to that before I ask my last question?
Yeah. And I think another piece of it too is what I've seen a lot with ketamine therapy is that it has a lot of restorative potential. So I think, you know, even if you like think of it as just really simple terms, like we go throughout our day. We have to negotiate time for ourselves. You commit to doing this program and committing to yourself and your healing through that process. And it requires you block out 2.5 to 3 hours of your day to just focus on you. You shut off technology before and after, and you really just, again, focus on you. During the treatments, it's, you know, headphones on, eye mask on, and you're taking a deep journey within yourself. Even if nothing instrumental or gigantic comes out of that experience as far as like, and I've seen people have these type of experiences that they've described as like, I saw my anxiety as a tree and I was able to light that tree on fire, and that my anxiety, like I felt the release of my anxiety with that. Like even if nothing like that happens, just the experience of that in totality, you know, the time out for yourself, of that quiet space, like there's a restorative aspect of that. So you come out of those experiences and just feeling a little bit more refreshed. And I think a lot of what we need and what we struggle with and challenges we have with anxiety and when we're high functioning and just doing a lot is that we're often operating with a resilience reserve that is on empty. So even just by filling that tank up a bit, we're able to face some of the challenges that we typically face on a daily basis, just better able to cope and manage and get through things. And maybe we were before when we're just kind of pooped out and running on empty.
Running on empty. Exactly. Thank you for that. I want to ask one more question before we close up. And I want to know what excites you the most about how mental health care is evolving, as well as what is the thing that still keeps you up at night. Kristin, can you start that one?
Think about this a lot.
I figured you did. That's why I asked you to go.
guides my daily practice. Yeah, I think, well, first off, what excites me is number one, that we're talking about things. You know, I've been working in mental health for over 20 years. And I think just that alone is a huge shift. Nobody talked about what they struggled with, the things that they've tried, how that's worked for them. So I think if the industry is not going to do it for you, and it's failed in that area, as far as like education goes, at least people are showing up for each other and offering that support. Number two, I'm really excited to see the shift in mental health, focusing on mental health from a more holistic perspective or lens. For years, we've been delivering a message that something like depression or anxiety is a result of a chemical imbalance in our brain. We take a medication and we just kind of sit back and hope for the best, hope that it helps us. We're kind of removed of our own self-agency and control and power in that process. We're a passive participant. And when we think about mental health and how we are understanding what mental health is today, is we're understanding that it's not just, you know, something going on in your brain. It's a lot of different things, right? Like it's genetics, it's your environment, it's your lifestyle factors, you know, your exercise routine, your sleep routine. It is your physical health too. We totally have underscored historically things like the gut-brain connection, right? So we ignore something like our gut health relative to something like our anxiety. And there's a really strong link and connection between the two. So what that leads to is total shift in how we approach treating mental health. And a big component of that shift is things that are like we have power or control over. So I think like the new era of mental health just comes with a lot more self-agency and really just highlights the need for us to be an active participant in our healing process, which then in turn gives us some of our power back.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Stephanie, what about you? What excites you? And if there's anything that still keeps you up at night?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I want to huge round of applause to everything, Kristin, you just said. That I think ability to have vocabulary now is that it underpins everything. You know, I'm a big believer in really going back to root cause of things. And I feel like, you know, we have done a very poor job of thinking about how do we educate people, kids. You know, you go down into grade school and think about what health education looks like, and it's like here's a skeletal system and here's a vascular system and here's some organs, and you know, it doesn't teach anyone anything really about how to operate their bodies and operate their minds. And so I think the fact that, you know, I have a daughter who is about to turn 18, and hearing her and her friends is what makes me excited, because this is normal vocabulary for them. This is a normal part of their way of talking, thinking, behaving, supporting each other, creating community. And that's beautiful to me, because we all worked very hard to get to where we're having this conversation right now. And they're having it as just a common business as usual day of like how you talk to your friends. So I think that is very exciting, because starting in a place where we can have a vocabulary is the beginning of being able to make other kinds of progress. And I think, Kristin, to your point, like that, I don't know, maybe willingness for this entire community who cares about health in one way or another to start looking at things around mind-body connection, you know, gut health, like all of these other connections that have not ever really been researched, have not been funded, have not gotten into popular vocabulary. I think that's all really exciting and very, very important. The thing that keeps me up, I guess, or the thing that I still feel like there's a lot of work to do, but one thing in particular is, you know, when someone is in a state of high anxiety, or they're extremely overwhelmed, or, you know, when you just feel underwater, is often like the hardest time to make space to go do something to address it, you know. And I see that with my employees and my clients and like everybody that I work with, is that, you know, you get to a place where you're so tapped out that you don't even have that 1% of capacity left to go do something about it or take an action to help yourself. And so I think a lot about how do we help people when they are in those moments, making space. And the best advice that I have been able to give is to lean into curiosity, because as soon as you start getting more curious about why you're feeling like that, or allowing yourself to ask some questions, then you can get your head out of that chaos, and, maybe just enough to start taking some steps, like doing the research that we were just talking about, or finding some other tools, or giving yourself some space to process or figure out how to get out of that state of chaos and anxiety and overwhelm.
Yeah, I love that. It's exciting for me as a not in healthcare at all. Just as a consumer of both lots of different kinds of therapy, and as someone who has struggled with her mental health a lot. It's exciting for me because I always grew up with the need and the desire so much to talk about hard things, and elephants in the room just made me so incredibly uncomfortable. But I'm also didn't grow up in a house where that was encouraged. As a Gen Xer who we grew up going to therapy in secret. And then I think millennials, we passed the baton and they were like, we're going to go to therapy, but we're also going to talk about it with each other. And then now Gen Z is like, we talk about it all the time. It's totally no big deal. So it's so exciting to watch progress as it's gone. And my oldest is about to turn 18 as well, Stephanie. And so it's the same. It's like everybody has a therapist. And even if it's their school counselor, they consider that their therapist. And I also think it's so exciting because I read something somewhere that it's like the mental health and the brain, the brain is the only organ that we're unable, that doctors are unable to just do an MRI of it and say okay, well, here's your problem. If you had something going on gastrointestinally, they could normally pinpoint oh, you have something wrong with your intestine, or you have an ulcer in your stomach. Well, with the brain, it's trickier. And so treatment has been more complicated. And again, excuse me for explaining that so not in doctor's terms, but I think that with psychedelics, and I wish that we almost had a different name for it, because again, the old connotation for it, I think that is such a move in the right direction for us to help people with our brains and our mental health. And so that's the thing that's exciting to me as a consumer of that. So we do need to close up. Is there anything that either of you want to say or either circle back to underscore before we are complete here? Kristin, anything from you?
Yeah, I think I just want to end it on saying thank you for welcoming this discussion today. Just encourage anybody that, like I've said before, is that struggling, maybe feeling like you don't have to have exhausted all options, but maybe even if you feel like you have to, and you have questions and want to understand if this treatment's right for you, we have a ton of great clinicians at Mindbloom that have supported people from all walks of life with all different types of challenges. And so I would assure you that you're not alone in what you're going through. And a great next step would be to go onto Mindbloom's website, click see if I'm a candidate, and set up time to meet with a clinician to understand what the process looks like and find out if it's something that might help you.
And I have a discount code for anyone who's interested in that. That link will be in the show notes, and it will take you to that same page that Kristin just mentioned. Stephanie, what about you? Anything you want to make sure that you say before we complete here?
People need to, and the women listening to this in particular, but anybody listening is what we kind of echoed earlier, which is you really should embrace that you own your health journey, right? Embrace that you own this, and that this is something you do have control over. You have a right to the data for your own health information. You have a right to asking questions. And the more that we feel empowered, the more that we're going to force the entire landscape to change. So, all of those things that we just talked about the way that we're seeing the shifts generationally, whether it's talking about therapy or just encouraging each other to drink a glass of water, those kinds of changes come from all of us as a community kind of believing differently in what it is that we have a right to and what we have control over. So my parting thought would be just, there's some really good news for everybody listening, which is that this is totally within your control. And there are a lot of tools that are out there to help you. And a lot of companies like Mindbloom who are making sure that that information and the education that you need is available to you.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I love that little cheer at the end there. I absolutely love that. And again, the discount link is in the show notes, and everyone listening, like, you don't have to stay in a perpetual state of anxiety. You don't. There are resources to help you. Hopefully Mindbloom is one of them. And thank you for listening, everyone. I know how important your time is, so I'm so grateful that you choose to spend it with me and my guests. And remember, it's our life's journey to make ourselves better humans, and our life's responsibility to make the world a better place. Bye for now.
Hey, did you know there's free secret podcast episodes waiting for you that are not part of my regular podcast feed? Yes, AndreaOwen.com/free. And you just sign up. You get a link sent to you. It's very secret. It's like a secret club. We don't have a secret handshake. Don't worry about that. But it's these motivating podcast episodes that I made for you. They're under 20 minutes each. There's 3 of them. They're for wherever you are in your life. So head on over there and grab them. They range from really supporting you and seeing you where you are and being compassionate, all the way to giving you a giant kick in your ass and telling you how amazing and gorgeous and phenomenal you are. So AndreaOwen.com/free and get your hands on that free podcast feed.